Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 12th episode of the Westoria Tech Talk. I'm Niroshan Madhampitike, Head of Projects at Westoria. Today, we are going to talk about something absolutely value-adding to every one of you. If you are thinking to grow in the business intelligence, data science domain. Together with me, I have a colleague from my company, Westoria, to talk about his journey as well as some of the great insights to educate you and inspire you about the domain. Without any further delay, let me introduce our guest for the day. Kavin, welcome to the show.
Hi, Niro. Thank you for that very interesting introduction.
Yes,
Very
my
happy to be
pleasure.
here.
Yeah, so absolutely, it's definitely my pleasure to have you in this particular talk show. And I'm sure what we are going to discuss will definitely benefit the community, giving them the right guidance in terms of growing in the business intelligence domain, right? To get a proper starting here, Kavin, think of the top three words to describe yourself. If you are to explain who Kavin Somachandra is in three words, what would be those three words?
One would be ingenious. Number two
Right.
would be analytical.
Nice.
And
That's your job.
you're right, that's my job. And the third would be, I would say, innovative. I was actually trying to go with curious, but I picked innovative instead.
Nice. Like it. Like it. Yeah. I
So
do
thank you.
understand that you were in a totally different career before, as you mentioned. You entered into the BI domain when you joined Westoria. How were you able to make that shift effectively?
Back then, when I was in the US, I was a biomedical engineer and I focused on one area called bioinformatics. Now, that word informatics will already tell you where I'm trying to go. It means, information technology.
Right.
So I would say the transition was pretty smooth simply
Mhm.
because bioinformatics is basically data analytics in the biomedical field.
Right.
So now the difference is that instead of analyzing DNA or diabetes or uh, any health related data, I'm now analyzing sales, marketing,
Right.
product,
Right.
more business related data. So that's the difference. So it's about it's always about whether you can apply yourself to other fields, right? And this is where that shift was quite smooth.
Oh, right. Good to know. Yeah, great to know as well. So now, based on what you just said, right? If anyone watching us, listening to us, thinking if BI would be the best career option for them, I think it's a great message. What you're saying is even your study stream, the expertise you have currently is not directly connected with BI. You might be better off,
That's right.
right? You
That's
might
right.
be in a better position to just pick that and then do great in that domain. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Nero, if we think about it, if we really think about it, the words business intelligence, it's basically data analysis, and that's there in every single field. Every one of us has done some level of data analysis since from like the small classes, right?
Hmm.
Those bar charts, pie charts, basic statistics, averages. That's pretty much some of the main skills that you use today in BI. And whatever job you were in, whatever field you're in, you could transition to BI because part of BI is there in all these fields. So I would say the transition moving into BI from wherever it's that's a very smooth transition. However, doing BI at scale, that's where it gets a little bit complicated. That's where you need the special skills, right? That's where the programming, the data warehousing, all these other technological jargon comes in. But just to answer your question, getting into BI, it's very smooth. Everybody has done some BI in their lives, at least a little bit.
Excellent. Yeah, love your insights on that. So just to kind of confirm what you have been saying, right? So I have been really curious about this topic as well. So in one of the MBAs from UK, right, I have been teaching this module called uh, Business Information Systems, right? In that module, right? So one thing that I was telling my MBA students was that the evolution that has happened in the organizational perspective, right? So there were many, few different eras that we have come across, right? Now we are at an era, like we are during a generation where the organizations wants to optimize their intelligence, right? I think this is where it gets really exciting for the people who are going in that track. Now, if you look at it as a profitable niche, right? I would confirm that BI is a profitable niche for a newbie, even for someone who has had experience on a different field. If you are passionate about the topic, analytics, the business intelligence, the data science, the big data, what you call it, I think this is a perfect niche, right? But as you said, Kavin, at one point it gets really trickier, where you have to be disciplined, you have to commit to it, then you have to start gaining the expertise around it, right? Mastery around it. That is when you can grow.
Absolutely.
That is when you can grow in this particular domain. But what we are saying is your transition to BI from whatever the stream you are in currently is not a problem. It's going to be smooth, and it's going to give you the best return if you commit to this particular
Absolutely.
stream.
Absolutely.
The next question for you, Kavin, if someone wants to get into this particular niche, BI, as a profession, where can they get started? What's their starting point?
I think the first starting point is that you have to check your statistics, right?
Mhm.
So wherever, in whatever job that you're working in, whatever role that you're currently working in, or even when you're getting started, you have to know your basic math. And because business intelligence is always about finding patterns, right?
Hmm.
That's It's always about finding patterns. And what I said earlier about doing things in scale, this is where at some point the numbers that you deal with get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you need to be able to summarize these numbers
Hmm.
into smaller, into basically bigger numbers into smaller numbers where you can get insights and conclusions out of it. So that's where I would start. And then I will learn a bit of programming, right? Because again, scaling up.
Hmm.
Business intelligence means that you're using data
Hmm.
to find answers to business problems. And it obviously means that in any business, your data gets bigger and bigger. With every each passing day, your data gets bigger and bigger. You need to be able to scale up. So first of all, statistics. Number two, programming. But it's always important to forget, so that it's very important not to forget that no matter what, the programming is always just a tool. You must never focus on the programming. You must focus on your statistics, whether it is sampling, whether it's your descriptive statistics, because that's a mistake everybody makes. People focus far too much on programming and they forget the math. Now the third most important thing, yeah, and it's a very simple thing. It's called storytelling, right? You need to be able to tell a story. You need to know where to start. You need to pique the interest of your stakeholders. At least that is what we refer to them in business intelligence. And you will have many of them, of course. And you need to be able to tell the story, the middle, the start, the middle, and then the finish, and conclude and let them know this is how you solve this problem. These are the suggestions. So you are not only the person who analyzes data, but you're also the advisor in a way.
Excellent. I love it. Like, so your insights are really exciting, and it makes sense to me. And I'm sure these three pointers will help anyone listening to us, watching us, to get started in a perfect way, right? So just to add one more thing on to what you said, Kaveh. So this is in a general perspective. I'm not a BI expert like you, right? But in a general growth, personal growth perspective, when I do coach people, and when I coach professionals, one thing that I tell them is, you got to be strategic about your moves, right? One of the big problems that we have as a community, particularly being one of the Asia Pacific countries, right? So we suffer, entire APAC region suffer from this problem that is being too tactical, right? So you are being told what is good, what is bad, and your choice becomes what is being known to be good in the community, right? And you pick up something which is a buzzword. So I know a lot of people who have picked the perfect stream, but that's not the best fit for them, right? So
Exactly.
this is where what we recommend you, if you want to get into BI, you need to validate your passion, right? As Kamin rightly mentioned, you need to do a bit of a validation yourself and ask the question, am I a numbers guy, right? Am I a number guy? Am I passionate about numbers? Am I able to, look at something and build up patterns, right? If you're not good at it, and you're not going to do a great job picking this. So it's not for everyone. It's not for everyone. For that matter, any stream is not for everyone. So there are people who are really acing, and there are people who are struggling. So you need to validate and do that validation. Be a bit of strategic guy, right? Or a girl
Absolutely.
for that matter. Then do look at the 3 pointers that Kamil mentioned, and I'm sure you're going to get a perfect start, perfect grip into the BI domain, and I'm sure you will excel sooner than later. What are the top 3 competencies that someone should have in order to excel in the BI career, as a career, BI domain as a profession?
So, Nero, that's a great question, right? And as I mentioned earlier, business intelligence is partly about storytelling, right? So I would say that you need to be able to present your findings very well. I think I usually would list this as the third competency, but in this case, I thought it would be very important to list it as number one, right? Because presentation and communication are vital skills. You need to be able to plot out your entire story from A to Z. And you need to be able to build very colorful, beautiful visualization. Not ones that, annoy people or it's a complete ISO, but visualizations that are very easy on the eyes. As the saying goes, we eat with eyes, right? So this is extremely important. Being able to present very well. That is number one. Number two is programming. And as I mentioned earlier regarding business intelligence at scale, programming is absolutely vital. It can not only help you move data from point A to point B, and this also from various source systems. Because let's be real, in a company, you're not gonna get data coming in from one place. You're gonna get data coming in from a variety of places. So many hands touching that data, right? It's gonna come from so many places. You need to be able to clean that. You need to be able to convert that into an analytical format, and you need to be able to analyze it. You need to be able to build out those visualizations that I mentioned. Uh, so programming is a very important competency. You need to you need to be very skilled at it, and you need to be able to uh, you need to be able to improve as you go. There's always engineering. There's always a software engineering side to it, as well as the analytics side. So that is where business intelligence gets classified as a professional skill because it has a software engineering side to it. And finally, of course, it's the number three, and I believe this is the most important, is knowing your mathematics, right? The basic math that you learned in high school or in middle school, extremely important here. This is where it gets a little bit more complicated, and you need to know those basic skills. You need to revert back to those averages, standard deviations, probability that you did for your high school exams and probably in university as well. And now you need to apply them to real world data. You need to be able to describe your business using these mathematics. And statistics plays a very important role here. So obviously, I believe, Nero, to be very good in this field, you need to, number one, be able to present your data really well. Number two, you need to get your programming skills in order because this is something that is constantly growing. That is something new coming in every day. And number three, you need to get your mathematics straight. You need to get your statistics skills, probability, linear algebra. This is very important in order to not just build and describe data, not just show data, but also to predict and forecast. So these are the three most important competencies.
Kavin, the next question is just asking a bit more deeper details about your own growth in this particular domain. The question is, how did you acquire the required competencies to excel in this particular niche? What did you do, and what are the things that you did in terms of acquiring the required skills?
That's a great question, Nero. So there are, of course, the basic skills you need to have when you join the field. And there are others that you learn on the job that are specific to your organization. So let's talk about the basic skills. That is your statistics, your programming. This is available anywhere nowadays. You can get it in a formal university education, or you can learn by yourself. There are so many resources online that will teach you these skills. That's Udemy, that's Coursera. There are other tools where you can code along as you go, like Free Code Camp, DataQuest, DataCamp. So these are like great resources, and by the way, resources that don't break the bank either, because these skills you could learn from somewhere online without spending a lot of money on a university degree. But then there's the other side of it that comes directly related to your job, and this is what you acquire by working with the different stakeholders you work with, the different teams that you have in your organization. For example, your development team, your product team, how it is structured, and then you will know whether you have to do some work from there. For example, at Vetstoria, we have the BI team consists of both the data engineering as well as the data analysis team. And that is because the product team does not do anything related to data engineering. So we have to be able to pull data from a variety of sources. And how do we do this exactly? One way in which you do this is you need to understand how the cloud works. Because everything nowadays is on the cloud, whether it is at Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud or Microsoft, it is imperative that you learn at least one cloud service provider, because this is where your data is stored. It gets stored on data warehouses provided by these cloud service providers. And then, of course, the other side is dashboards, right? You will need to adapt to whatever dashboard tool that your organization uses. Now, the visualizations are mainly the same thing: bar charts, pie charts, line charts, time series, all the same thing. But knowing and familiarizing yourself with the various dashboard providers is very important. And in case you need to tell a story, and knowing how this technology actually works, it's extremely important in sculpting, client-facing dashboards. So I think that summarizes it. Some of the programming skills you will need are Python, SQL. There are others, but I would not directly go into them now. But these are the basics: mathematics, statistics, and then of course the cloud providers, dashboard providers. These are like, I would say, the most important skills.
Yeah, so from my perspective, Kavin, just to complement what you have been saying, of course, in a generic perspective, right? If someone reaches out to me and asks, Niro, tell me how to acquire certain competencies to do my job well. Now, there are quite a bit of general knowledge that you can find, right? It doesn't matter what specific job you are going to do, but if you want to excel in that job, I mean, there are certain fundamentals that you have to get right? Number one is, I think, understanding the minimal viable job requirements, right?
Absolutely.
This is what you're going to be discussing in your interview process, right? So just figure out if this is the right job for you. I think it's critical for anyone to do great in the job, right? So I have come across people who have picked the greatest job, but they are not competent. They are not thinking this is the right job for them. Then it's not going to work, right? Just do that validation, do that check-in, ask that question: is it for me, right? Is it the right job for me? And then if you trust that this is the right job, pick it up, right? And be confident. So I think showing that confidence is important. This is what I have been doing in my career, throughout my career, particularly, right? When I wanted to be a speaker, right? Sometimes you got to just show that you are very confident in speaking, right? Sometimes we're going to the audience, you can't be just be backward, just communicate that you are not good at it, let me make some mistakes. No, you're not going to do that, right? If you do that, no one is going to trust you. No one is going to believe that you have the right credibility to speak to them. So your job as a BI professional works the same way, right? So build up that initial confidence level. That is a must. Go for it. Start picking up from where you start, and then apply the tips that Kavin just shared with you, because he just tells you from his own experience, coming from a totally different stream of studies, right? Doing great in the stream of BI, business intelligence. He's sharing these tips with you. So do follow them. And I'm sure, you're going to ace your job in the coming weeks, months, and years. What does a day in the life of a BI analyst look like based on your experience?
Well, that's very interesting. But yeah, it always starts off with my morning coffee,
Okay. Right.
Yeah, and then
so can it be a soft drink as well? Should it be a coffee always?
It can be whatever you want it to be, Niro.
Okay. Got it. Go for it,
But
Kami.
personally for me, I'm a very heavy coffee drinker. So that's
Great.
how I usually start my day. Coffee and emails. So yeah, so that's where it starts, right? You get a lot of work from your stakeholders, and you may work with a lot of people in the industry, right? You may work with individual colleagues, or you may even work with two or three of them as stakeholders. They all have different requirements. Sometimes your stakeholders are like the upper management as well.
Hmm.
So my day usually starts off with emails or Slack messages from these different stakeholders after they have reviewed some of the work that I have done. Whether it's positive or negative doesn't matter, but there's always, we always iterate, right? There's always, doing business intelligence, always an iterative process. And from there, you now get these different changes requested. We always work in a very agile way, and you get that into your work pipeline. And from there, you have a Jira ticket or something with all the details listed out. So now you plan your day. What exactly am I going to work on first? Am I gonna work on data engineering? Am I gonna work on an improvement? Am I gonna totally build a new metric? Am I gonna focus on a dashboard? These are all parts of the BI role. So once you figure out exactly what you need to prioritize, that's when you get started, and you let your stakeholders know this is when I will be able to deliver on this. And then you carry on, right? You continue to work, you continue to iterate, and then as the deadlines come in, you submit your work for review. It's just like any other job. It's there's no difference, right? It's all the same. And sometimes you have to do presentations, right? You have to get your storyline together, you have to get your notes. And like you mentioned earlier, Niro, it's very important to appear extremely confident, right? Because you're the data analyst, and in a way, you are the advisor as well, right? You're not just the person who shows them what's happening. You're also the person who tells them what to do, where to go, what to look for, what actions to take, right? So confidence is key. Whatever you do, always be confident, especially when it comes to presentation. And that's very important so that you don't erode their trust in you. And so that's pretty much what my day looks like. After you complete, you then plan your day for the next day. Uh, and sometimes you potentially plan out an entire project. It's pretty. I would say it's not very complicated. So well, quite similar to any other job that you do.
And you do enjoy your day.
Absolutely. That is the key, right?
That's a key success factor for anyone to do great in their job, right?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Kavin, the next question is really exciting one for those who are coming into the job as a newbie, particularly like you think of a undergrad, right? Just haven't worked anywhere, so they are getting into trainee BI analyst, or let's say as associate BI analyst role. They don't have a lot of experience dealing with stakeholders, right? So my question to you is, what kind of stakeholders do you work with, and how do you understand their requirements?
Yeah. So Nero, the word I personally gave them the word the stakeholders, right?
Mhm.
Because to make it sound much more formal than it usually is.
Okay.
But a stakeholder can be anyone essentially in the company, right? It could be someone It could be the head of department. It could
Right.
be, even it could be someone from, yeah, one of the uh, a single team member who just wants something, very quick, or it could be a manager who wants an entire project built around, or it could even be, an external customer, right?
Correct.
So that is where I break them down into internal versus external, right? And what do I mean by, how do I define this? How do I separate these two? With the internal stakeholders, there is more opportunity for iteration, right? There's more opportunity to iterate, more opportunity to fail, right? But with external stakeholders, you are now representing your brand. You are now representing yourself, your skill set, pretty much everything. So there is less room for iteration, which is where your research needs to be perfect. You need to know exactly what your stakeholder wants. You need to discuss those preliminary discussions that you have. It needs to be done extensively, extremely well thought out, and you always need to think of, what is the business objective, what is the problem that they're trying to solve, right? You need to find the answers to this, and you need to try and convince them that, your product is the product, the solution, right? So in a way, I would also say in this case, a BI analyst is also a salesperson, right? Because you're not only trying to show data, but you're also showing them the value that they are gaining out of your product. So, reverting back to what I said about storytelling, visualizations, and always remember confidence. Confidence is key. But internal stakeholders are a whole different ballgame, right? With them, you don't have to try and, you can make mistakes. You can iterate with them because they are your own colleagues. You trust your own colleagues. You can work with them one on one. That's more room for experimentation. But with external stakeholders, there is always that understanding that you have to know that you're representing your brand, you're representing your product. So that's the key difference. And you're always solving a business problem, not just for your stakeholder, but also for your own company. So that's the key difference between internal and external stakeholders.
Okay, so you're saying so mainly the classification that you provide to the audience is two types of stakeholders, internal and external, right? Now again, internally you may have stakeholders from different levels, right? As you said, it might be your one of your colleagues in your team, it might be another member from another team, it might be a manager, senior manager, maybe the founders, the board of directors, anyone, right? And do you feel like in any case, with all these levels of stakeholders, you have the same flexibility of iterating?
Um, yes, of course. With the internal stakeholders, there's always that ability to iterate as you go. You can iterate as much as you want, but with external stakeholders, it's always a different project. So you have to understand exactly what their requirements are, and those become improvements. So and especially things like data quality are extremely important, because with internal stakeholders, if the data is wrong or there's something off about the data, and trust me, this happens all the time, they will point it out to you. You say, okay, well, that's strange, and you go and fix it, and then you try to investigate and you come back. But with an external stakeholder, you don't have that freedom. You can't show something wrong, and then you're going to face a lot of backlash. So that is one key example where there's a lot less freedom when you're dealing with external stakeholders compared to internal stakeholders.
What are the common problems that you have encountered in this role?
I think, Nero, there's not many uh, problems that you encounter, but there are a few, of course. Number one is data quality, right? So this is a very it can vary, right? And the reason I say that is because not all data is equal. There is some data that get touched by a lot of human hands, data entry, etc. It's subject to a lot of human error, a lot of discipline problems, where people don't follow the process, and that results in a lot of dirty data. And then there's obviously the other type of data, which is, basically system data that is, entered in and follows a proper validation process. So it is always the first kind that is subject to errors and can always be very problematic. And sometimes if it is very high in volume, you either have to go and clean the data or you have to throw it out. And as a data analyst, it doesn't feel right to throw out data, if you know what I mean. Every single data point is very important. It tells a story, right? And number two is metrics, right? And I would like to refer to this as measuring what matters. You see, as a BI analyst, you always have to build metrics. And these metrics are sometimes industry specific. And you need to understand exactly how to build a metric. You need to be able to do that research. But the industries are so big that there's always new factors coming into it all the time. So you're always changing those metrics. Sometimes it's very hard to build them, very hard to measure them accurately. That is number two. Finding out and measuring what matters, and especially from a BI context, building it. And then number three, I would say problems that are not well defined. And as the head of projects, Nero, I think you might have come across this quite often, where some problems are just not well defined. You have to ask yourself, what is this person trying to solve? What are they trying to do? Is the problem well defined? Is there even a problem?
Yes,
Right?
I agree.
And you have to you always, when you see something, someone coming up with a requirement, and it's the same in BI as well. You realize that the stakeholder has not either thought out their problem properly, they don't know exactly the scope of it, either it's too big, it's too small, and that is where it wastes a lot of time, because now you have to take it back, you have to figure out what are you trying to do, what problem are you trying to solve. Which is why it's always important to try and understand your goal, your objective. Because without it, you're just lost. You're just doing things that are not very, very impactful. And just when I thought that, that would be the end of it, there's always, number four, right? Which is again that, analytics are everywhere, right? It's every single product you look at today, you always see a bunch of charts or graphs or something everywhere, right? And there is always going to be that discrepancy, right? You might give something to a stakeholder that might be slightly different from what a dashboard somewhere else shows, right? So it might not exactly fit their idea of what the results should be. So you're always likely to get some sort of a pushback where stakeholders will come and say, I don't think this is right. So in order to respond to that, you need to know what exactly is the business problem you're trying to solve. Does the variation in numbers really, is it that important, right? If one report says 10 and another report says 7, is that really impactful? I don't really think so. But if one report says 1 million and something says 100, I would consider that a very big discrepancy, right? So it's always important to focus on what's impactful, right? And do not worry about the small things, but focus on the big picture.
Kavin, now this is another important question for our audience, particularly the guys and girls who are looking to grow as a business analyst. Sorry, let me repeat. So, Kavin, the next question is about the growth. So, I do understand you have a very busy schedule. So do others working in this particular domain, even in in any other profession. Nowadays we are too busy doing our daily priorities, daily work. Now, in a busy schedule like that, how do you find time to grow yourself? What do you do specifically in terms of focusing on your own growth?
That's a very interesting question, Niro, because it's something that I myself have struggled with. How do you also not let work dominate your life, right? And I find the answer to this in two ways. One is that, if you may recall, in the earlier part of this conversation, I said that I describe myself as innovative. So one way is, you always try to push your team or your organization towards new technologies, right? And especially if you're trying to understand and learn and grow your skills, you try and push your team towards new technologies that they can use, that will solve many problems, that is it's that it will also help you grow your skills, because when you learn with an objective, right, it's far more impactful, it sticks, rather than you randomly going and pulling some sort of online lecture and trying to learn that. If your job involves learning, that is what really sticks, and that's what I believe personally. So the other way is, you always understand that when you're in BI, especially in a role like this, your career is eventually, it grows linearly. You see, it grows linearly. There's always steps you must take. So you always know that there is something coming up, that the next step is always coming up. For example, you have a lot of data. You have analyzed the data and you're building a dashboard. But now you know that doing some forecasting or some predictive analytics is coming up, it's looming in the horizon. If you don't have those skills, you have to learn them, right? Otherwise, you're not gonna be able to do your job. So that's the other way, right? You always set out a bit of time and you always learn the skills that are needed to grow in your career, whether it is programming, whether it is a new type of statistics, whether it's machine learning, whatever is next. It's always important to know what is next. But at the same time, it's also important to keep in touch with the existing technologies, because if you take something like Google Analytics or Google Cloud, or any AWS, that they're always coming up with new products, right? New products that can be useful for business intelligence. It's always important to try them out and see how it may benefit you. How does it solve some of the pain points you have? Because as you grow in your career, some of the basic things that you do are going to become, a bit more painful, right? You don't want to do them. And there are now tools that can automate them away. So it's always important to be innovative in this field, so that your current job or your next job, you now move with more confidence. You now move with a bigger and a better skill set. Good.
Super. Yes. Hey, last question. I think it's good, right? So your answers are refined. Yeah, so I could easily edit it.
Fun.
and very less ers and ums and stuff like that, right? So it will
Oh, really?
make it perfect.
Cool.
Okay, so let's go for the last question. The last question for you is, so let me start. It's
I'm distracted
too
for a bit.
stressing. Yes. Okay, Kavin. So we are reaching the end of the show, but I don't want to end this show without asking this question from you. This is the most important question that I believe everyone should listen. That is, what advice do you have to, sorry, let me repeat it. What, 1, 2, 3. What advice do you have to anyone wanting to begin a career in data and BI?
I would say, Niro, just do it, right? Because that's exactly how I got started,
Like Nike.
right? Just by Nike, you know, and that is something that you will follow every day in the role, right? Whether it is something that you haven't learned or whether it's something you have not tried before, you always just do it, right? And my advice, just to answer your question, is the role itself, getting started is quite easy, but scaling up, that's where you need to build the skill. But always stick to the basics. Because wherever you go, math is math, right? Whether you do it on a computer, do it on a calculator, do it on your phone, wherever, math is math, right? Statistics will always be statistics. So understand your basics. Know that when you build something, when you program something or build a product, you should always know how to think of it. You should always, be able to open up the hood and see what's under it, think of it, right? So know your basics, become better at programming if you aren't already. Always practice, right? There's always new problems to be solved. Focus on, especially on data structures, storing data, different ways of presenting data. Always look at what other people have done, look at their work. I'm not saying, you copy them, but I'm saying you get some inspiration from them,
Learn
right?
from them.
Yeah, learn from them, get some inspiration, because even for me, just 2 days ago, I saw a very beautiful dashboard and I was just thinking, maybe this is what our next corporate dashboard looks like. This is what it looks like, right? This is what version 2 of it looks like. And I've already got ideas. So always keep in touch with with the industry, what other people are doing. You can find a lot of that on LinkedIn. If you see people sharing their work. And again, I have to reiterate, stick to the basics, improve your programming, and always remember that you can always be inspired by the work of other people. So that's it. It's nothing complicated. That it's always been done before. There is no need to reinvent the wheel. There is always what I call smoothening the wheel rather than
Right.
reinventing,
Right.
smoothening it,
Right.
right? So
Tweak it as
tweaking
well.
it. That's the
Yes.
word, tweaking it. So yeah, so again, it's not hard to get into it, but scaling up, that's where the challenge is. But there are always resources. There's a lot of resources out there. You don't have to break the bank, and you can always, get started whenever you want. So just do it. Just get in there.
Excellent, Kavin. Yeah, so love your insights. So just complimenting what you said and adding one more thing. join Vetstoria. Kavin will mentor you.
I
Right?
will, of
So,
course. Glad to help.
yes. So that's an invitation to all of you. If you are keen to get into BI, if you are doing good in BI and data, join us, and we have ample opportunities to offer you to grow in this particular domain. So with that, we are gonna say goodbye for the day. So this is the 12th episode of Vetstoria Tech Talk. Today, I spoke to lead business analytics at Vetstoria, Kavin Somachandra. Kavin, thank you very much for being here, sharing your great insights, helping the community out with your great learning and insights.
Thank you, Nero. It was a pleasure to be here today. It's a great opportunity.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for watching us, listening to us. So if you like this video, do share in your networks, do comment. If you learned something really exciting here, just tell us what you learned in this talk. So saying again, goodbye to all of you until we see each other again in the next episode. That is a 13th episode of Vetstoria Tech Talk. Until then, take care, stay safe, do great. Thank you for watching. And this is Vetstoria Tech Talk. This is the one and only tech podcast in Sri Lanka, made by techies for techies. For much more valuable contents, follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Until we see you again, take care, stay safe.